Welcome back to LaidOPEN podcast. I'm Charna, and I have an episode today that I have really been looking forward to. One of my wishes, if I could have anything come to fruition, it would be that every parent, upon the birth of their child, is gifted free parent coaching. And they would get the tools to raise embodied and regulated children. And in the process of that, they're getting that training for themselves, right? You can't co-regulate, you can't rather regulate your child if you're not regulating yourself, right? And so that means it's a lot of work, but it's something that is really essential. And it's one of the things that motivates me to do the work that I do with parents. So this next guest is somebody that I've been really looking forward to having a conversation with. My guest today is Dr. Chelsey, and her expertise lies in applied educational neuroscience, social and emotional learning, educational equity, and building calm, cooperative family relationships. And she makes a lot of fun videos on Instagram that provide a lot of very concrete tools and interventions. And if this isn't a testimonial, I don't know what is, but she actually works with her mom in collaboration to teach parents how to be more regulated for themselves and how to regulate their kids. So there you go. Welcome, Chelsey. I'm so glad to have you here. Learn how to live embodied. Your life is about to unwind. Uncover new tools and start healing. Leave trauma and tension behind. Isn't it great, laid open? Let all your desires come true. How can you live laid open? Imagine yourself brand new. Imagine yourself brand new. It has been a long time since we met through Amy McLean, who I know you worked with at Soul Shop. Can you give the listeners a little context? So, what was Soul Shop about, and how did you come to do what you're doing now?
Amy and I at Soul Shop worked mostly on teacher education. Soul Shop runs social and emotional learning programs for elementary school age kids and professional development programs for their teachers. So that's the context that I met Amy in. At that time, I also had a couple of very young children, and I was parenting my niece, and it was hard. There was three little tiny children and one big giant child, and it was a very challenging time of parenting. And my mom had this parenting course, and she just was on me to take it, and I didn't want to. I was like, who takes a parenting class from their mom? I already know all of this stuff. And I eventually did take it to get her off my back. And I found a set of tools that really beautifully matched the theories that I was working with as an academic, that transferred the stuff we were doing at Soul Shop into more practical in homes, in families kinds of modes. And so we revamped it and have been teaching it together now for many years.
That's incredible. And how is it, is there a discrepancy between how mom parented you and the skills that she's teaching all these other parents? Like, was there, how is that to be co-teaching with your mom and learning from her in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any such thing as a perfect parent.
Yeah.
Nobody has that. I certainly am not that. I would not say she was that. She, when she was parenting me, I would say she lived pretty close to these kinds of principles. She, we used to say like, "Oh, we're the guinea pigs," right? She's gonna try it out on us. But I would say she stayed fairly close, and I certainly, I definitely learn a lot from her. I learn a lot from watching her with my own children and listening to her coach some of our parents, especially those with, those that have really truly challenging children.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's such a gift to have a grandma, to have another resource. So whatever may not have been perfect for you as a child, getting to see her parenting or like grandparenting your
Mhm.
kids well, I imagine
Yeah.
is also healing.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they adore her and she's great with them. I have one who has a hard time with math. I also had a hard time with math, and I do not like all of the math homework that I have to do with this child, with the other 2 also, but it's really hard with the one who struggles. And oftentimes I get frustrated and I'm like, "You can go call her." And they get on FaceTime and she helps do the math homework. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So many layers of resource there, right? It's like one of the key things is nervous system regulation for the parents, right?
Oh,
Just
100%. Yeah.
just like when you're training a dog, right? It's there's a little bit of training with the dog, but it's really about the nervous system of the owner and
Sure.
how they are around that little being and what that little being is,
Mhm.
how it's getting activated, right? Yeah. So that's a big
Yeah.
piece of what you do with the parents that
It's
you
a
work.
huge piece, and I think, our lives are so fast and there's so much happening, and most parents, I think, in this generation of parents they want it. They want to parent gently. They want the relationship. They don't want to be tossing out punishments or stuck in a yelling loop or whatever, but it's hard, I think, for a lot of people even to notice, like, "I'm kinda getting activated here, and I need to have you do the math homework with somebody else." It
Mhm.
or I need to take a moment. I had a mom the other day say to me, "Oh, I finally get it. When my child starts whining," it was whining, I think she was talking about, "when she starts whining like that, I need to check in with myself,
Mhm. Mhm.
not give her a consequence." And I was like, "Yeah,
Mm.
totally." And, I think a lot of parents don't notice. It's like, are not in touch enough with their bodies to notice that they are getting activated until it's like the end of the rope. You know what people say is like, I gentle parent, I gentle parent, I gentle parent, and then I can't and I explode.
Right, 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 right. And so for people who don't know the distinction between gentle parenting and more of an authoritative approach, can you break that
Mhm.
down a little bit?
Yes. So gentle parenting is a totally amorphous thing, right? There's not a single definition. There's a lot of things that exist under that umbrella. When I talk about gentle parenting or brain-based parenting, what we're looking for is like prioritizing the relationship and using the relationship as the driver to get stuff done, to have to support the child to put their dishes away or get to school on time or whatever. And so instead of, like doling out punishments where the assumption is kind of I'm gonna give you a negative condition so that you don't do X, Y, and Z again, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna send you to your room, and then you're gonna go in there, and you're not gonna wanna have that experience again, so you're not gonna fight with your sibling.
Yeah.
I would call that sort of the other end of the spectrum.
Mm.
I would far rather have parents wonder, like, "Why are they fighting with the sibling? And what can I do to support them to get a different outcome? Like, what are the set of experiences that this kiddo needs in order to show up differently?"
Right, right. And what's so key here, at least from my understanding, is kids are really different. They need different things, and what's gonna work with one kid is not gonna work with another kid. And so
Totally,
if you're not just a parent, you're a parent in relationship with this kid in one way, and you're a parent in a relationship with this kid in another way.
totally.
And if you have multiple kids like you had, right? It's like, how do you
Yeah,
shift gears in that quickly when you're trying
yeah,
to manage and orient to multiple relationships at the same time?
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think it's challenging, and when the thing that is kind of, like, front and center is brain and nervous system co-regulation, like, there's gonna be times when I am more focused on one kid than the other two. There's also going to be times when I have to parent them as a group, like as a little sibling unit. And that might mean that sometimes not everybody gets the most attuned ideal thing
Mhm.
for them as a unique individual. And, it's like the pattern and the cadence of the connection and the regulation and the touch points that matters. And so, well, yes, sometimes the 3 of them get what one of them needs, as long as all 3 of them are experiencing a pattern of connection, a
Mhm.
pattern of regulation, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just referenced co-regulation. So parents are co-regulating with their kids, helping their kids regulate. And then earlier, the piece of like being in touch with your own body as a parent and being self-regulated, right? You might have to co-regulate with your partner if you have a partner. But if you're a single parent, how do you learn how to self-regulate and become more embodied, and how essential that is as a parenting tool?
I mean, I think as parents, if we are not, at the very least, conscious to our nervous system, aware, it doesn't really matter what parenting tool you use. You could use the best parenting tool in the world. And if you're divorced from the fact that you're like really edgy and having a really bad day and like cranky, it's going to come out with tone and you're going to go up, 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 escalate, escalate, escalate with your child. And so
Mhm.
I always think about it as like, okay, I don't have to be perfectly calm all the time. I do have to, like, know where I am in this space and in this relationship, and it's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard work. It's like, I always tell that to parents. It is really challenging to ask you, especially if you're on your own or your partner is away, right, at that particular moment. It's very challenging to say to yourself, "I have to bring it down, and I don't have another person who's an adult here
Yeah.
to help me regulate, and so I have to do it for myself so that I can do it with my children." I always tell people they need to it's like, we gotta find a 5-second something you could do in 5 seconds. That's really all you have
Yeah.
sometimes, right? And is that the most ideal thing? Of course it's not. I would love for everybody to be able to go to a yoga class, but that's not always available. And so then it's like, okay, what is available to you? Can you go wash your hands in cold water? Can you get a cup of tea? Can you run up and down your stairs? What is the super fast practice that moves you back into your body so that you can be take more responsibility for the emotional landscape of your family?
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're saying also really highlights, when people when they have their own trauma and they
Mhm.
haven't healed it or attended to it, it's certainly gonna get activated by these little beings and their needs, and especially at certain ages, right? Like, let's say you were abused at 5, and then your kid approaches that age, and whether it's even conscious or not, you're what can happen is that material of, like, this kid's needs and, how you were or were not attended to
Yeah,
can get activated in the system, and so it can be like this very
yeah,
intense dysregulation that may or may not even be conscious.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are many, many things like that that come up for parents as they raise kids, and it is a lot to ask someone to be with that kind of material while they're also making oatmeal and getting finding socks, right?
Mm.
Doing all of the sort of daily life activities, and I also think it's quite healing to parent your child this way and to do that work so that you can show up in ways that are nurturing that possibly you didn't get or you
Yeah,
didn't get the way that you needed.
and it's such an opportunity too. I mean, as much of it so much of life is a trial, and it invites you to step into practices, right? And so
Mhm.
knowing, like, it raises the stakes. You're like, "I wanna perhaps raise my kids differently than I was raised, or I want to have
Totally.
my kids, have a certain experience. And that's a pretty big motivator for a lot of my clients, right?
I can't think of a client that I have worked with for whom that isn't a motivator,
Mhm.
right? People have the idea that they want to show up differently with their kids. And when they have a child who is spicy, neurodivergent, strong willed, whatever you want to call it, and
Mhm.
is going to push on that, it brings everything up to the
Mhm.
surface. And it's like, okay, I have to learn a new way. And the way that we work with people is very action oriented, right? So it's like, okay, what are the action? What are the words we're saying? What are we doing? As opposed to like, why do I feel this way? Which sometimes people need to go from both
Mhm.
directions, but it's very practical.
One of the things you pointed to earlier was about tone.
Mm,
So important, right? Like
mm,
30% of what we're saying, or 30% of communication is verbal, and the rest is nonverbal. And
yeah.
but even though tone is verbal, just what that activates in somebody's nervous system. Can you say more about how tone can be used to de-escalate?
Yeah, well, I think it goes both direction. And kids hear, and adults too, children hear tone and process tone long before they make sense of the language. And that's true. That's true always, right? It's like the brain processes the tone first.
Mhm.
And I think we have to really own our tone. It's like you have to own it.
We've heard that so good.
Own your tone. Um, Right, we communicate so much, right? Even if we just, like, go back to that math homework example,
Mhm.
if I'm sitting with my child and being like, "Come on, you've gotta do this. We have to finish it." There's so much tone in that. I'm not even yelling. There's not even a child in here, right? There's so much tone and so much is being communicated that's gonna shut her right down.
Mm.
And so what we're shooting for is, like, warm, engaged, positive, a tone that communicates like, "I know you've got this, and we're gonna figure it out together."
Mhm.
As opposed to like, "Oh my god, you've gotta finish the math homework." And then, of course, there's gradations of that, right? It's like if I'm yelling or slamming a door or walking around with my shoulders really high, all of those things communicate tone to our kids also and work together to, like, create the culture.
Kids are also amazing at observing all of that, whether they're aware of it or not, but as they get older. I was teaching a class in a high school, an embodied sexuality class, and it was the most one of the more intense experiences of my life.
Yeah, I
Um,
bet.
but there was one girl who was very intense and would act out a lot in class and kind of controlled the energy in the class. And I remember another girl responding and pointing out as I was teaching this lesson, talking about, like embodiment and cues. And they're like, just like you're doing now, I see your jaws really tight. Like,
There you go.
absolutely, completely transparent body language, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
It's so true, and we bring with us all of that energy, like, into these interactions. I mean, I have this really vivid memory of a time when my kids were quite young, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I had come home from, like, a super stressful day. And my dad had been babysitting, so they were, like, inside, and it probably was this time of year or the winter because it's, like, dark. So I'd park, and I'm, like, walking up, and I can see this, like, happy scene, right? They're, like, dancing, they're playing with the dog, he's holding them, it's, like, really sweet. And I get home with my stressed out energy, and he leaves, and then we just had the worst night. It was horrible, right? It was, like, the milk spilled, the kids got in a fight, one of them threw the toothbrush, like, we couldn't get to bed, just, like, all of this stuff.
Mm.
And it's not like they also had a bad day. They were
Yeah.
just having a dance party with their grandpa. It was
Mhm.
fine. I just brought all of this energy in and it kind of seeped in, right? And everybody took it on and they're not gonna turn around and be like, "I'm having a horrible day." they're going to throw the toothbrush
Mhm.
or pull the sister's hair or whatever. I think we have to take responsibility for the way that our kids experience us. And, there are some children out there for whom you can kind of fake it till you make it.
Mm.
And then there's other kids like that girl in the class that you were teaching who are just going to see right through that, right? And then I can say, wow, yeah, you're right. My jaw is really tight. This is a tricky moment. So that I can bring it down and get present again.
Mhm. Mhm. There are so, I don't have my own kids. I have a lot of clients with kids,
Mhm.
and so there are a number of scenarios that repeat themselves that are challenging
Sure.
for the parents that I work with, and I would love for you to weigh in on a handful of scenarios.
Yeah, totally.
So one that seems to be a common situation
Mhm.
is, and of course, all of this it's tricky because are you working from, you know, toddler to teen? You're parenting people, so there's so many different developmental stages that you're having
There
to
are.
address. So with that, understandably, different,
Yeah.
answers would be different depending on the developmental stage. But so let's say there's a kid who's, 3 and there's a preference for a certain parent,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's all
Everybody's
about
got this.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
totally.
and then the other parent has to manage their own dysregulation in the face of feeling constant rejection
Mhm.
when this child is reaching for their other parent. How do you work?
People that is
Yeah.
it's so common,
Yeah.
and it's so hard. And I will say I have a set of twins, right? And when they were that age, I was the preferred parent for one and the unpreferred parent for the other one. And it's hard on both sides. It is to be the one that the child wants, and it's hard to be the one that the child doesn't want. And I think if we could if we could practice at 2 and 3, having like a glass bubble around ourselves so that when I have a child saying to me, "I don't want you. I only want to go with daddy," or you're the only mommy for bedtime or whatever. That would be a great practice to have at age 2, 3, 4, so that it's not getting in there and I'm not making it more challenging by bringing my own stuff
Yeah.
to the interaction. I often see this happening around bedtime is like a big one. Only mommy or only daddy can put me to bed. And I think it's very important to build a lot of clarity and model a lot of disappointment. And so what I usually have families do is like, okay, we're going to make a bedtime calendar. It's a mommy night, it's a daddy night, and we're going to alternate which parent puts you to sleep. And we're gonna make this calendar like 3 or 4 days, and everybody's gonna know. I could put it on the fridge or like on some common space.
Mm.
And when it's bedtime, it's like, oh, it's a mommy night. And if it's not me that the child wants and my face is on that calendar, I am gonna put the child to bed,
Mhm.
right? Because we've built in the clarity. Like now I'm gonna put the child to bed. And I can say, I know. He is the best at putting kids to sleep. Ugh, he's so good, right? And then I have to stay with it.
Yeah.
Like, then I gotta stay. And sometimes that means laying on the side of the bed so the child can't get out. Sometimes that means like waiting out a big upset. But what happens that messes everything up, right, is sometimes then the other parent comes in. And if I have set it up so that it's my night, I can bring all the empathy and all the stuff to that. But the other parent coming in and intervening is gonna make it really challenging. I mean, of course, if you are losing your mind and need to tag out and are just so escalated that you can't manage anymore, then of course I would have you tag out
Yeah.
and let the other parent come in. But then we are going to have to work on that in the future so that we
Mhm.
build some clarity
Mhm.
around it.
Yeah.
And most people get a turn to be in both roles,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Is there a specific age developmentally? Is it like 4? Like, what is when there's a flip, like a switch to a different age? Do you track that?
What do you mean? Like a
Like
different preferred parent?
yeah, so that the kid may be like, "It's all about mama," or all about a certain parent for until a certain age, and then there's a switch, or no?
I haven't seen that. Usually, it's often about like the relationship that that parent has or does not
Mhm.
have with the child. Sometimes it is like about the way that person interacts or doesn't interact with the child or the patterns that they've established. Sometimes it's just like that parent works a lot and this one is here more often and I just want to be with her, right? So sometimes there's a big reason and other times there's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, also for the parent who's always kind of pulled on and wanted, right? It can be equally challenging.
Oh my
And
gosh,
so
it's so hard.
right? And like it's like body space. How do I take some
Yeah.
space for myself? And so this is another one where there's a parent who's being like their body parts are being, maybe it's breasts, but like body is being grabbed and pulled on, not just at bedtime, but throughout the day or in the
Yeah.
restaurant. And how can
Mhm.
the parent who's not being grabbed at support? How can they both establish developmental, like age appropriate boundaries, as well as support one another in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to ask, why is the child doing that?
Hmm.
Is the child doing that because you're out at a restaurant and it's like sensory overwhelm and loud and the child doesn't really have a role and maybe they can't really see over the table? Then I want to solve for those things. It's like, what does this kid need so that they can show up differently? I see parents all the time in this kind of situation who are just like, I am so touched out, I can't even deal.
Hmm.
And I know touched out, like, I feel that. And it's just saying what the boundary is not enough, especially because kids who are doing this are usually, like, under 5. It's not enough to just say, like, "You can't touch me anymore," or "You can't grab my breasts," or "You can't put your head up my shirt," or, like, whatever they're doing. I can say that, and then I have to, like, follow it up with, like, some supports, and the supports are gonna change and need to be attuned to the child, right? So I actually was in this situation with one of my kids a couple of years ago. She was probably 6 or 7 at the time, and we were in a restaurant that was, like, too loud and too adult focused. It's totally our fault. This was not a good place to take 3 kids to eat, but we were there, and she was putting her head up my shirt, and I'm sure she was hungry, and it was loud, and I told her not to do that a couple of times, which was probably my first error. And I'm sure my husband also told her a couple of times to stop. When we give a negative direction like that, we give it with so much tone.
Hmm.
And, to our earlier conversation, I would be better served to tell her what I did want her to do. Eventually, I took her outside and we went on a little walk and like found some bugs and communed with the bugs. And then I could see that, like, the food was now on the table, so it's like, "Hey, let's go. We've had this connection 5 minutes. We're gonna go back in." Going back in means we sit in our chair and whatever the direction needs to
Hmm.
be, we're gonna eat our food I'm not gonna say, like, "That means you can't put your head under my shirt again."
Yeah.
It's just like that going back in means that we're gonna sit at the table and eat our food. Are you ready for that? She was starving, so she was definitely ready for it. If she were to do it again, then, like, one of us needs to take her out again,
Hmm.
right? So, like, the problem is, like, in that kind of scenario, people let it go on for too long,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then it's like the whole head, now her torso's under my shirt, right? And I've let it escalate so much when in reality, I would have been so much better served to either me or my partner, like whoever's better regulated,
Hmm.
to take her out and give her some help before it ever got to that place.
Yeah. And I also heard you saying not speaking in not, no negative language, right? So before
Yeah.
your nervous system gets too disrupted, and also the repetition. And again, I'm thinking, I've trained dogs, but don't have kids. This idea of if you say no, 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 it's like you're giving them this, you're just giving them the energy and attention instead of that actually doesn't. To give
It
a
does not work.
negative command does not work to make a dog stop doing something, right?
Yeah. It doesn't work for kids either. It usually escalates or makes it worse over time. And then kids don't, I mean, parents say to me all the time, like, they do too know what they're supposed to do. It's like, well, do they really? And I don't wanna leave this, like, ambiguity. I mean, ambiguity is so hard to tolerate. I don't want there to be ambiguity about what the right thing is. And so I'm just gonna remove that by giving it to them, like, "Here is the right thing."
And so if you were to put language to it in that moment, if you could go back in time before your partner said stop it and you said stop it 3 times before, like what would
Mhm.
the positive framed language be in that moment? Like hands off, or like what would you?
It's probably something like, "Right now we're coloring."
Mm,
Right? Or I could say hands-on on body. My concern with that is that it doesn't really anchor her very well
mm,
in like, okay, my hands are supposed to be on my own body, but what am I doing in this like overwhelming scene?
mm.
Right? How do I re-anchor into something else that's going to help me get my needs met? And so it probably is something like right now we're coloring, hands up here.
Mm.
Or, let's play a card game, like, or one of those hand games, right? Or something so that I'm giving her a way to engage. Obviously, if a kid's pulling on you or getting in your shirt or like doing that kind of stuff, they want you.
They want
I'm
contact.
going to
Yeah.
give them to you. I'm going to give you to them. Right. That
Mhm.
does mean you have to stop having the adult conversation. Right. I mean, if we went further back in time, like probably the right thing to do would have been to pick a different restaurant that was more appropriate,
Yeah. And I
you know?
find it, in working with adults, just those in couples, right? Those moments of if we could go back in time, what are all the different choice points?
Mhm.
Like what could we do different next time so that it's not just like
Yeah,
this repeated setup?
yeah.
And so, yeah, note to
It
self.
is a repeated setup
Yeah.
oftentimes, like, people have the same problems again and again and again,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking about a family that I worked with a while ago who had a 10-year-old with really big explosive explosive reactions to all kinds of and we finally got them to give this kid what he needed before the explosions, but it's hard because if you don't have the explosion, you don't necessarily know that you caught it because 'cause you're like, "Well, would I have had the explosion or would I?" Well, yes, you probably would have,
Mm.
but you didn't have it because you intervened,
Mhm.
right? And so then people keep intervening, and then it's like, "Oh, maybe I don't need to work so hard."
Mhm.
And then the explosions start again,
Mm.
right? And so, it's protective to intervene faster, right? If I have, like, a kid who's, like, splashing water out of the bathtub and I'm like, "Water stays in the tub," and they continue to splash it, I would probably pull that kid right out of that bathtub,
Mhm.
right? It's like, "Oh, yeah, bath is done, and here's your nice cozy towel." If I let it go, like, "Water stays in the tub, water stays in the oh my god, I'm gonna lose my mind. Water in the tub." Then
Yeah.
then it's over, right? It's so much more protective for me, for my own nervous system to be like, "Oh, bath is done. Let me pull the plug, and I'll get you a nice cozy towel,"
Yeah.
after the first time.
What about kids who are going through periods where they're hitting, where they're like, there's just a lot of physical lashing out?
It's
So
a
it's not,
stress behavior.
yeah.
Mhm. Right? And I think that's the first thing that I want parents to hold on to,
Mhm.
is that hitting is a stress behavior, and then I have to ask, like, "Why is this kid hitting?"
Yeah.
Right? It's like, are they hitting because there's something about the play they don't understand? Are they hitting because the sibling is not letting them have the fidget? Are they hitting because their nervous system is just, like, super overwhelmed and giggly and loud and, I can't even control my body." Those are all it's like all of those things are different. right? And so as soon as a kid hits, like, that's my cue. This kid needs some help. And so then it's like, "Oh, oops, hands on own body." And then I have to address, like, what on earth is going on?
Mm.
And if I don't know what's going on, I'm just gonna re-anchor
Mm.
the kid into something else that is like a positive engagement.
I have been, the listener to these different scenarios, and
Mhm.
the thing that my heart just sinks so much is when there's a divorced parent where you don't get to protect your kid half of the time, and that there's very likely an abusive parent on the other side of
Mhm.
things. And as the kid gets older, if this explosive behavior continues and it becomes physically unmanageable, right? Like they're strong. They get stronger and stronger. And it's like how to navigate that. It's like keeping your kid safe, but also not having 100% custody and not being able to control
So
what's
many
happening.
families in this kind of situation, and all you can really do is parent your child the way that you know they need to be parented in your own home. You can't,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think oh, what is hopeful for folks in that situation is that all of the research would point to, like, one solidly attached person,
Yeah.
and you can be that person. I mean, it's a big transition, and I have a mom right now who is in this exact situation, and she's every time she gets her kids back, it is a whole transition,
Mhm.
and she has to expect that the behavior is gonna go up around the transition. Transitions are really hard. They have a really high cognitive load, and switching from home to home is a big one.
Yeah.
And so we've really had to set up how she holds that transition,
Mhm.
right? So it's like she's holding it by slowing it way down. She's like got a snack in the car. She's really taking care of herself. She's gonna heavily reduce language as soon as they come into the car, right? They've got a pattern going
Sure.
that she's had to support with visuals and practices and like saying things the exact same way every single time because she knows it's going to be hard. And so she's walking into that knowing like, I'm getting 3 kids who are going to be edgy. Like they're probably going to fight with each other in the backseat of the car. And so she's going into it, w with a groundedness and the expectation that, like, I'm gonna manage this.
Yeah. And along those lines, also in terms of, you mentioned attachment, secure attachment, having a child who's adopted, and, people adopt children at all different ages. And we also know that perinatal psychology says there's an experience in utero that, that an infant is, or a fetus is having. And what can adoptive parents do to address and create more secure attachment?
Them to do the same thing that I want other parents
Yeah.
to do, right? I certainly have many families that are foster families or adoptive families, and, you know, they have to work harder, right? It's like, I'm gonna expect that I'm gonna have to work harder. I'm gonna have to take care of my own nervous system more. I'm gonna have to slow it down more. I'm gonna have to, like, really eliminate no, not, stop, don't. I have to do those things because I have a child whose nervous system, because of the trauma they've been through, because of whatever reason, right, is more sensitive, activated, hypervigilant, and so, from my perspective, that makes these kinds of tools even more critical,
Mm.
right? Because, there also are some children who they just come that way. They just come a little bit more
Yeah.
wired a little bit more tightly, and maybe they have some kind of trauma history, or maybe you get an ADHD or ASD diagnosis at some point in time, or PDA or something like that, and maybe you don't.
Yeah.
right? Like for whatever reason, because you don't want one or because I don't, for whatever reason. But what you do have is like the behavior, the more reactive nervous system, and the need to to sort of 10x your parenting.
All same, same. And then with neurospicy kids or a trauma history, it's like turning the volume up on your own nervous system regulation and real extra attention to earlier interventions, not using not, don't, stop, all the kind of like negative languaging. And
Yeah,
the anchoring, I really like that. Again, with I'm thinking of dogs, it's like they're chewing on something you don't wanna chew them. Give them a bone you do want them. It's okay to chew, right? This is a toy. This is not a
totally.
toy, right? Like redirection.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
important.
And yeah.
So, so important. I also think most things can be solved with praise. People all, the parents that I work with are like, Chelsey, you don't get it. There's nothing to praise. This is my problems. My kid is like hitting like crazy and like swearing and throwing chairs. And kids need a lot more praise than they get. And it needs
Mhm.
to be high quality praise.
Mhm.
And I think this sort of like circles back to that conversation about tone. Right? And honestly, even our own nervous system, right? It feels so much better to notice what your kid is doing well than it does to be like, "Are you seriously hitting again?" Right? It feels better,
Mm.
right? And that feeling state, I mean, it changes everything, right? It makes it so much easier for the kid to do what they need to do and for me to give them the kind of direction that they need. So I mean, that's a really big one for me.
Positive reinforcement, even with like couples that I work with when they're not nice to one another and just the amount, like the meanness that
Yeah.
can be in the space and naming that and giving them a simple exercise of appreciations, like every day acknowledging so that the,
Yeah,
the cognitive bias of looking for the ways that the person is an asshole or looking for what isn't
totally.
working rather than shifting into
Totally.
let me orient because I know every night I'm going to give you feedback about what is working. It's like
Yes,
shifting the goggles that you see the world through.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's like if you go to the playground and you just listen,
Mm.
like if you just sit on a bench at a playground and listen to what people are saying to children, it's like, don't go up the slide, stop throwing the stand, don't do this, don't go over there, not that way, over. It's like constant,
Yeah.
right? And if you just, I mean, I would quit a job. If somebody talked to me like that all day long, I would leave.
Yeah.
I'd be totally out. And so then the task is like, okay, you have to change what you see. And sometimes that means like you have to praise just like a little tiny intention of doing the right thing.
I led a rites of passage group for like 11 to 14-year-old girls. And there was a male guide for a boys group. And he was telling a story about this boy who couldn't sit still and was always like, had ADD and was doing all the things. And he gave him the title and the job as the lizard keeper. So it was like finding the lizard and keeping the lizard. That became and it, like, settled this kid's system down, which I love. I have a really sweet image of that. It's like, "He's such a good lizard keeper."
Yeah, totally. Kids need that. It's like, oh, this is how I can like show up here,
Yeah.
how I can anchor into this space. And most of the time when people have a child who's hitting
Mm,
or like doing some other tricky behavior, it's because they don't know. The kid doesn't know what they're supposed to be doing,
mm,
or they can't do it for themselves yet, right? And that's such a beautiful example because like you can always come up with some way to orient your child,
mhm.
right? It's like the other day I was cooking with my kids and they were it was like a cake. So there was like flour and stuff that was like going into the bowl and there's a limited number of cups of flour, which means that not everybody is going to get to put the flour in. I had to give one, so they're getting a little edgy, and I gave one of them the job of eggshell crusher, right? the same thing as lizard keeper. It's like, here's like a thing that you can crush these eggshells with. It's not really a job, but like it is good for the garden.
It's so
Um,
satisfying too, though, right?
mm,
Crushing eggshells? It's very tangible and, like, tactile.
yeah. And then we're not fighting over like who's gonna put the flour in.
Mhm. Excellent, excellent creativity there.
Mhm,
So, a huge focus of my work with people of all ages is about
mhm,
embodiment, right?
mhm,
It's and that goes beyond anchoring yourself in your body. It's like your
mhm,
values, how you relate to others, etc.
mhm.
How do you What are some tools you could give a parent for how to raise an embodied child who knows what feels good to them?
Mm. Yeah, I think that modeling is really important on that one. And so I wanna make sure that I'm noticing how my body feels and articulating that to my kids. I also think we want our children to have experiences where they're being asked to read their bodies and respond to their bodies, right? And with, you know, I think this comes up a lot around sugar and sweets and food and that kind of thing for parents and kids. I personally think it's fine for a child to eat 7 pieces of candy on Halloween and then have a tummy ache, or 20 pieces of candy. They're probably not gonna eat 20, let's be real, right? And then I'm like, "Oh, yeah. How's that make you feel?" Right? It's like, if I have a kid who isn't reading their body, which is really common,
Yeah.
right? Kids who, like, start doing something and then they have a pee accident, or older kids that are, like, I don't know, eating all this junk food and hiding it in their room or whatever. On a little kid, I'm like, "Oh, wait, let me feel your tummy." Is it, "Oh, I feel the spaghetti over here." It's like, "Oh, there's the peaches." Right? And I'm just engaging with them about how things feel, right? And I think you can do that. It's not just food, of course. There's lots of ways that you can and spaces you can do that. I also think when kids have the experience of like, I felt kind of weird around that person, right? That's really important to tend to. Like one of my daughters recently, so they're 10, and so there's a lot of social stuff that is sort of like emergent and arising for them. And they have a friend who they describe her as, like, not having I actually think they use the word boundaries, not having any boundaries and, like,
Mm,
sort of taking their stuff, but then getting mad, like, reaching into their desk and taking a pen, but then getting mad if they wanted to borrow her pen, and as we're talking about that, it's like, "Oh, like, I kinda don't like that, like, that makes me not feel good," and it's like, "Oh, yeah, tell me more about how you feel when that
mhm,
happens." I definitely don't wanna say, "Oh, just let her borrow the pen," or, like, just tell her I don't know. No, I want them to know that, like, there are signals in my body that I can listen to, right? It's like when my tummy feels tight or when my chest feels that way, like, it's okay to listen to that and say, like, "Hey, I don't wanna play."
mhm.
Right, I think that's especially important for girls.
Not dismissing what your kids are feeling and reporting. I mean, it's hard if you tend to dismiss your own experience, you're going to dismiss your kid's experience. That's just like it's tricky for people. So yeah, people have to be connected to their own sense of awareness and not dismiss their own feelings and needs and to be
Totally,
present to their kids.
totally. And I think this stuff happens in just, like, very small, granular kinds of
Mhm.
moments, right? It's, like, happens on the way to school, or it happens, like, when you're at the grocery store and, like, someone's looking at you kinda weird. And there is a tension, right? It's like, I want my child to be able to speak up for themselves, and I also want them to notice, like, how I'm feeling.
Mm,
Right, like, an example of that is, like, my kids don't like to well, they're working on it, but they would prefer I order for them at a
mm,
restaurant, and we've been in a pattern where I just order for them because they were just very little, and now they're not as little, right? And they could kind of order for themselves, but
yeah.
we had to work on it, right? And I might have a kid who says like, "Well, I don't know, my tummy feels funny when I'm at a restaurant and the waiter's asking me what I want." And I wanna be careful that, like,
Mm,
yeah, we could notice that, that doesn't mean I'm gonna be like, "Okay, you don't have to order at the restaurant." It's
Mm.
like, "Okay, I wonder what would help."
Just that distinction and like kind of like I see a like a knob that a volume that like slides from here to here, and if here is totally being dismissive and here is always being like, "Oh, no discomfort. You can never feel any discomfort. How are you feeling?" Like, and so how parents can have a space where they're listening to their kids' feelings, but there's also, structure. There's also like, how do you keep stretching your capacity? How do you build
Yeah.
self-trust in a kid? It's like, well, they have to do things for themselves. You can't do everything for them.
Yeah. And you can't it's important. I think this is a really important thing for parents right now because they people want their kids to, like, know about their feelings and listen to
Mhm.
their bodies and feel heard, and sometimes they take it too far. It's like the next thing we know, we're talking about how you have all these feelings about brushing your teeth, and it's like, well, let's just it's fine to have feelings about brushing your teeth, but let's move this forward so there's some movement here, right? And we don't get stuck.
And so in that example, how could a parent navigate that? Because I think, yes, we're in the Bay Area in California where we value feelings and there's a lot of reactive, intense, like toxic empathy in the, American culture and very different parenting styles out there. And so how do we find the middle ground?
Yeah, this is really important. This is so, so important. And if it's an activity of daily life, I mean, I think this goes back to like, where is the resistance coming from? Like, why? Why is this going on? And if I'm trying to get my kids to brush their teeth and like move through the bedtime routine, I want to think about like, what is the next step? And is this a thing that where, like, feelings really matter? Or is it just a transition problem? It's probably a transition problem,
Mhm.
right? And so then I am bringing my empathy. I'm, like, bringing the feeling in the way that I show up, and I'm gonna break it way down. I'm not gonna be like, "I know you feel mad." It's so easy to get the feelings wrong. Right? So if I'm like, "You're so mad about brushing your teeth," and my kid doesn't really feel mad, they feel, I don't know, frustrated, annoyed. Now I've, like, layered on this experience that doesn't feel right to the child on top of the transition, and, like, they're gonna throw the toothbrush at you, right? I would far rather have you say something like, "Here we go. Open drawer. There it is." Right? And then maybe you start brushing your own teeth, or maybe you have the next step to move them through.
Could just sit and ask you parenting questions all day long. Yet we have to end. So, do you have a brief exercise of all the different things that we've talked about? Is there some nugget practice that you would like to leave our listeners with?
I think that probably the most important thing is praise. And so if I was gonna have folks do one thing today, it would be to take a chunk of time and allow your language to move away completely from correction, direction, instruction, so that everything you say is a positive noticing of what your child is doing. And sometimes that is like you could use sportscasting where you're just like labeling everything the kid is doing well. I want to keep it authentic, right? I want to keep it authentic and real, but it's worth giving it a shot for an hour or 2 hours and then letting yourself off the hook and just noticing, like, what happens when I let everything else fall away and I only say positive things to this kid? What goes down? And if you do need them to do something, like if it's dinner time and I need them to set the table, quite possibly I can just say, "Wow, you're getting ready to set the table. You remembered to get plates and forks." right? You're thinking about what else we need. I can move them forward that way if I must give a direction. But that's what I would say.
That's great. And for any of you out there that parents that are listening, try this also with your co-parents. I I feel like
Totally.
like the little kid who got criticized is so alive in so many parents, and they're so sensitive to feedback, that frustrated feedback from their partners, and
Yeah,
we all need a little more encouragement.
we do. It's so easy to see, especially your partner, like all the things that they're doing wrong.
Mhm. Yeah.
And everybody, adults need it too.
Mhm.
Everybody needs to hear a little bit more about what they're doing well.
What you're doing is so essential, and I honestly wish that every parent got to have this
Mm,
kind of coaching. It would be a really different world. So thank you.
mhm. Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been lovely to have this time together.
Yeah. And how can people find you if they want to dive deeper, if they want to work with you?
Mhm. Well, they could go to our website or they could go to our Instagram. So my Instagram is Dr. Chelsey_parenting. Our website is guidingcooperation.org.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
A couple years ago, before I created my online course, someone asked me if I could teach everybody one thing, what would it be? And ultimately, as humans, we have the universal experience of being in these bodies that get dysregulated and overwhelmed when we're stressed out. And when I think of a population that is often the most stressed out, it's parents. So I wanted to let you all know, especially given the topic of this particular episode, which is focused around parenting and how to raise more regulated, calm children, is I'm starting a group in January. And it's not just for parents, but you are so welcome to get the support, to get the repetitions and practices that are going to rewire your brain through your body, through physical practice and the support of other people. There's value in venting and talking it out. And there might be a little bit of that in there, but this is literally hands on physical practice that we're going to get to do on a weekly basis through the winter season. And I know as parents, it's so hard to prioritize your own needs and yourself. And I'm encouraging you because ultimately the payoff is huge for you to create more internal peace, which helps you slow down, see your behavior, and respond differently. If this is something you want, I'm offering an early bird special until November 30th. So there's a reduced price. If you want more information, go to passionatelife.org.